Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
It's This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find more podcasts and more info. This is Steve White, your friendly host, welcoming you to another edition of This Day in Sports History. I love a lot of things about going to a ball game, but since I was a little kid, I've always loved to watch a good mascot work the crowd in a stadium. You know, mascots are always good for a little bit of entertainment, and there are the classics like the Philly Fanatic and the San Diego Chicken, and the new guys like the Flyers Gritty. Well, from planned routines to improv moments, the good ones always have a way of making us laugh. But on occasion, a mascot can kind of push the envelope and push the opposing team's buttons a little too much, like on this day in 1989, when Montreal Expos mascot Youppi drew the ire of Los Angeles manager Tommy Lasorda and was ejected from the game. The Dodgers were in Montreal on this night, and things were not going great. LA was 8 games under 500 and 13 games back in the win column, pretty much out of the pennant race picture at this point. Tommy Lasorda was generally in a bad mood most of the time, but he was especially so at this point. Add to that, Lasorda was not a big fan of mascots. Just the year before, Lasorda attacked the Philly Fanatic after the Fanatic brought out a Lasorda-like ragdoll during a game. Tommy went after the Fanatic, took the effigy away from him, and then he hit him with it. So, on this night, it was a long night at the ballpark, with the game scoreless heading to extra innings. Now, as was typical when a game went longer than the scheduled 9 innings, Expos mascot Youppi put on his PJs and his nightcap and signaled that he was ready to hit the hay, so let's wrap it up. Well, it's the 11th inning now. Youppi had climbed on top of the Dodgers dugout. It was a good spot to be seen, and if he could somehow distract LA just a little bit, maybe that would be a good thing for the Expos. Well, he made a little bit too much noise for Lasorda's liking. Youppi intentionally fell down on the dugout, and he may have stomped a little too hard a couple of times. Lasorda came out of the dugout, and he stared up at the orange, furry creature and started yelling at him to get off the dugout. Youppi didn't budge. Instead, he lapped up the attention from Lasorda and the crowd as Lasorda continued to fume a little bit more. Lasorda then appealed to third base umpire Bob Davidson. At that point, Davidson gave Youppi a casual, get out of here motion. And for the first and only time in history, a mascot was tossed out of a baseball game. Of course, in true mascot fashion, Youppi soaked up the comedic moment. He hopped off the dugout and he slow-walked a few steps up the aisle before being met by a security officer. Boos started raining down on Davidson and also Lasorda. Now, Youppi, the man inside the costume on this night, Claude Hubert, didn't know if he was just asked to get off of the dugout or whether he'd truly been ejected from the game. So, one of his assistants went down to check with the umpires between innings, and Youppi had actually been ejected. The crowd started a Youppi chant, and they kept it going for the entire inning. That caused Davidson to rethink his decision, and in another umpiring first, decided to reverse his decision, allowing Youppi back into the stadium as long as he promised to not get back up on the Dodger dugout. Youppi put his PJs back on, and he went back to work. Unfortunately, things didn't get any better for the Expos. The game went 22 innings, with Rick Dempsey hitting a solo shot in the top half to win the game for the Dodgers, 1-0. Youppi's performance on this night, though not appreciated by everybody, is one of the reasons that he, or it, wound up in the Mascot Hall of Fame. And Youppi is also one of 3 mascots on display at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, along with the Philly Fanatic and the San Diego Chicken. From that baseball oddity, we go to another one. On this day in 1982, Gaylord Perry was ejected from a baseball game for throwing a spitball. Now, that does not seem so odd until you realize that this was the only time that Perry was thrown out for doctoring a baseball. Perry did not really hide the fact that he was a spitball pitcher. Well, I mean, he did. He didn't walk out with a tub of Vaseline and start lubing up a baseball there on the mound. He was esoteric about how he did it, and always had a smile on his face when he told people that he didn't do anything illegal. When asked if he ever put a foreign substance on the ball, he would say, "Absolutely not. Vaseline is made right here in America." He threw his first one in 1964, and the man wrote a book in 1974 called Me and the Spitter. Rules were changed or added specifically because of Gaylord Perry. In 1973, Rule 8.02A3 was added that said a player could not expectorate on the ball, either hand or his glove. Perry played 22 seasons for 8 different teams in the majors. He won 314 games, and he earned 2 Cy Young Awards. And everybody in the league knew he threw a doctored baseball. And he was a friggin' magician at it, really. And that's why he only got caught once, 20 years into his career. At this point in his baseball journey, he was playing with the Seattle Mariners. The Boston Red Sox were in town, and Gaylord got the start. He worked into the 7th inning, doing the same routine prior to every pitch of using a variety of fingers on his pitching hand to wipe under the brim of his cap, behind his ear, the back of his head, sometimes in the V of his neck for a little dab of Vaseline or KY jelly or Brill cream. With 2 outs in the 7th, Perry delivered a pitch, but home plate umpire Dave Phillips saw something a little out of the ordinary, and he asked for the baseball. Normally, Perry had ways of eliminating the evidence, but he didn't quite get all of it this time. Phillips threw Perry out of the game for his first and only ejection of his career for doctoring a baseball. The thin veil that covered his cheating did not prevent Perry from being voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1991. From a guy who pitched until he was 44 to a guy who made an impressive debut as a 17-year-old on this day in 1936, when Bob Feller used a blazing fastball to strike out 15 and win his first Major League Baseball game with a 4-1 win over the St. Louis Browns. Feller's 15 Ks was one shy of the American League record at the time, and within 2 of the Major League record of 17 held by Dizzy Dean at that point. Feller would go on to play 18 years in the majors, missing 3 to serve in World War II. He led the league in strikeouts 7 times and finished with 266 wins. If he had not missed those 3 years to serve his country, he had more than a good chance of winning 300. And how about this story from 1957? For the first time in the history of the Little League World Series, a team from outside the U.S. won it all. On this day, it was the Little League team from Monterrey, Mexico, featuring a 5-foot-tall, 88-pound fireballer named Angel Macias, blanking the U.S. team from La Mesa, California, 4-0. But that wasn't all. Macias struck out 11 of the 18 batters he faced, and the other 7 hit balls did not leave the infield for a perfect game. The team from Monterrey was diminutive compared to their American counterparts, giving away about 35 pounds and 5 inches. But the lack of size did not matter, with Macias throwing smoke. Just to get to this game in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, though, they had to travel a long, hard road. They began their trek with a 150-mile drive to McAllen, Texas. Then it was on to Corpus Christi, up to Fort Worth, and then to Louisville, Kentucky, winning and advancing at each stop. The entire town of Monterrey followed their progress through the tournament by radio. And when the Mighty Mites won on this day, an all-night celebration ensued on the other side of the border. Time now for today's Non-Sports Did You Know? Bamboo grows so fast, it's actually measured in miles per hour. It can grow up to 35 inches a day, which equates to about 200 thousandths of a second per hour. That's all I've got for you today. Check back in tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.